Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Prelude podcast. My name is Harley. Guy at the top of me is Chase, um, working hard. And then we have a couple new faces. We'll start with the lovely lady to my upper right or left. The only lady. Uh, Lovely lady, what is your name?
I'm Lexi.
Hi, Lexi. And what do you do for the ministry?
I am part of the art team for Interlude. And
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Lovely gentleman to my other side of me. Lovely gentleman, what is your name?
I'm Joseph.
Joseph, what do you do for the ministry?
I lead the art team.
Nice. So, I think I mentioned this in the last podcast. We're gonna kind of just, for the audience, we're just gonna kind of dive into each niche part of our art team. We have music, we have visual art, and then we have just the miscellaneous art. So this week we're going to look more into the visual art aspect of it. So kind of for both of you, we'll start with this open question. What kind of is like your kind of main medium of visual art? Like what do you do? Or what are like the main things you do? Do you paint? Do you take photography? Do you do photography? Do you sculpt? Do you what do you guys do for your art?
Joseph.
Don't rush all at once to answer, please.
All right. Well, for me, initially we were first planning the first interlude. At first, I think we had the idea of doing just t-shirts, making our own t-shirts from scratch. My medium would be sewing. I also work with dyes, chemical dyes, vat dyes, sulfur dyes, anything that's kind of related to chemicals. I'm not an expert. I don't want to say I'm an expert at anything, but I enjoy the craft.
Nice. You still have that learning process.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
I think you're always learning no matter where you are in that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Lexi?
I mostly work with acrylic paints, just canvas and painting materials. That's what I've been doing for most of the interludes and most of my life. I haven't really branched out too much into anything else, but that's something that I'll be working on in the future.
Nice. I really like that. So to kind of get into so following off of that, what was the first time you recognized something as art?
Take your time.
It didn't. All right, art. I'm just gonna assume I'm gonna go first. Art didn't hit me until like my freshman year in high school. I think I told Lexi the story where I did a self-portrait. I was late that day. I didn't follow the rules. I didn't get the rules. No one gave me a paper to tell me the rules. So I do a self-portrait of doing negative colors. Take a picture with our phones and then blow it up and then paint it in negative. I didn't know that's what we're supposed to do. So I decided I'm just gonna pick the color red, the middle name. I'm just gonna do all red. So I ran with that. And I was supposed to fail because it didn't follow the rules, but my teacher didn't fail me. She actually gave me an 8. And that art piece got put in exhibit and I got third place in the county. I didn't know what I was doing. To me, I was just doing something for a grade. But apparently to the county, they saw that as art. That was my first introduction to kind of what I identified with as art. And that kind of lingered with me up until my adulthood, until now.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's really important too to note. You mentioned like you didn't really know what you were doing, and that like you didn't really have like a guide or an instruction. And I think that's really cool from an art perspective. Is that like that's kind of the point. Art is not supposed to have an instruction book or like, you don't really paint in the lines like you're taught as a kid. Art is kind of self-expression, which means you kind of have to make it unique. You have to kind of just do what you want and make it into a piece of art.
That's kind of almost like, this is totally off topic. It's kind of like almost like a juxtaposition, though. That's the right word for this, because on one hand, there's like that claim of like, art should come from like a place of just self-expression. It shouldn't have like it shouldn't have a big amount. It shouldn't have like intention behind it. Like kind of like from your story, you were just kind of doing something for a grade. You weren't trying to like move people, but obviously you did. But then like, art is like a reflection of self. So it's like, I don't know, maybe you both can talk more about it, of like how you guys, like, I don't know, do you guys like put a purpose behind your art, or is it just strictly self-expression? And if it is self-expression, doesn't that fall under a purpose, because the purpose is to self-express?
I would say for me, everything that I make has a meaning behind it. It has a purpose behind it. I rarely make something just to make it. But I feel like as human beings, we're meaning-making machines. Like, we look for meaning behind everything. So, like, if you're looking at something and trying to consider it art, I feel like a lot of the times people consider it art if it has a meaning to them. Like, that's when they consider it true art, is when like it makes them look at something differently, or they feel like they can connect to it. And even with self-expression, like how you said, I feel like that can also qualify as purpose, because a lot of art is it's a visual way to express your emotions and what you're feeling when you can't really put it into words, in a sense. You just kind of like throw it onto the paper or the canvas or the clothes you're making, like whatever it is. It's just kind of a way to get that out there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I like kind of like that little segue into kind of like putting it on a canvas, because obviously like you guys work more fundamentally in like a visual art aspect. I know Joseph kind of dabbles into the music area as well, and Lexi too, but we don't have to get into that with the rapping. But you guys dabble in visual art. What about visual art kind of stimulates you guys? And this is coming from someone who, kind of like what Lexi said, like, I'm only interested in visual art if like I can connect with it emotionally. So obviously you've connected with it emotionally, but even deeper than that, because it's the kind of medium you've chosen. What about visual art stimulates you guys?
Aside from emotions, I mean, I kind of, it's unavoidable to piggyback off of that. There's a lot of stimuli that goes into visual art, and it could be even through lights. Not just talking about clothes, or even if you're watching music video. I know you showed me a few Slipknot music videos that are just loud, aggressive, and just in your face.
Yeah.
That affects you in little tiny ways, but it changes your behavior. One thing I was showing Lexi was another podcast of Orson Hugh. I think I've harped about him to you, Harley, where his theory behind changing how he dresses to change his behavior. And you and I were talking too about how you were in, what was it, karate?
Hapkido, yeah.
Yeah, and how you're able to move around in those clothes, but you can't move around too often in your personal clothes.
Yeah.
Visual art rather, works that way a little bit, to me at least. Where the stuff I create with clothing, I feel more comfortable wearing it than I would with something like a Nike sweater. I wear that, but I just feel more in my own skin. That's expressive of myself.
Kind of like feeling a need that you had.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important to like, I mean, I guess to like your own art, right? If you don't feel comfortable, whether it's in your own shirt design or painting whatever you're painting on a canvas, then like you're not doing something right.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I hate some of my sweaters. I don't like all of them. I think a few of them, Harley, I told you I wanted to burn.
Nah, these are fire, man. This is fire. This is a fire one. This is my favorite one. I bought this one. It's $30 and 3 dinners. I think I still owe him one more.
Yeah, I think so, but we're gonna let him.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, I like that, and I kind of see that, like kind of creating a need, to kind of feel comfortable, and I think art definitely, even during this time, has been proving to like comfort people. What about you, Lexi? Like, what drew you towards paint and canvas?
No, I've just kind of always had sort of a need for it ever since I was young. I remember one of the earliest memories I have, I was sitting at my kitchen table just drawing people, and I specifically remember drawing this lady wearing this like long green dress and a hat with the giant flower sticking out on top. And I think I always kind of go back to that when I think about like how important art is to me, and like, how it all started. It was just kind of a way for me to, I don't know, express what I feel, because I have a very hard time putting things into words. And so I get kind of putting it on a canvas or a paper, whatever, was easier in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm stumbling a lot right now tonight.
You're not short a few words, Jojo. I think, because I was thinking about this too, listening to Lexi, I do kind of can tell that you guys say a lot with what you create, and I think it's definitely, and I think it's something definitely to note, because I think people who are looking into like, because I do think everyone's like a creative, and I think it's just a matter of like what they're into, and so I think like for you guys to like say like, it helps me find my voice, I think that's accurate, because Lexi just said, she has a hard time, vocalizing things, so for her, art gives her that voice. I think for you, Joseph, I find it that like your art pinpoints exactly what you want to say, because I think you can articulate yourself. I think it just pinpoints it like perfectly with your art, and even some stuff I can't even like tell. It's just like, dang, that's a lot to take in, which I think is great. But yeah, so kind of another question I gotta have for you guys is,
before you answer that question, I wanted to know, so you made a good point, and I like the fact that you guys talked about it, but the fact that like art is an essential like extension of yourself, right? And sometimes it can be, that extension can be like a personality trait that maybe you wish you had, that you could express without the art. But I think the cool factor is the fact that you're able to do it through something that also brings some sense of enjoyment and some sort of thought to somebody else too, in a way that most other people with that same personality might not be able to do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I continue off of that? I'm gonna let someone else jump into that.
Well, I kind of like where Jace went with that, because it kind of leads into the question I was going to get into, was what inspires you, and I think those definitely join together, like, because I think there is something deeper than just like, if you think Jace meant, there is something deeper than just like, oh, it gives me a voice. It's like, oh, it gives me this trait that like I wish I had, so obviously you had an inspiration behind that. What was that inspiration, or was it like a collective of inspirations?
For me, it's been, I can't say one thing, or even, well, a lot has inspired me. A lot's influenced me. I think influence would be a much better word in this case. I think the one thing that's inspired me the most is, oh man, I'm gonna let Lexi jump into that. I'll continue in a minute. I gotta think about it. It's a lot to think about.
Think about, if I had to make a suggestion, think about like your top 5 influences, and maybe why those are so important to your art style. Maybe think about the question that way and see what you come up with. Challenge you a little bit.
So I'm gonna go first.
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Yeah.
I would say for me, the the biggest thing I can think of is my faith. I guess just kind of, especially like looking at nature and seeing everything that God's created. Like, I would consider him like the ultimate artist, right? And so like, if you look out at nature, I remember there was this one moment I was laying down in the field up in the mountains and look up the night sky and you just see a whole bunch of stars. You see like the shooting stars and like the trees going up in your the side of your vision. And I just remember being so in awe. Like, this is God's creation. Like, this is beautiful. And I guess part of me wants to capture that on canvas too. Like that feeling of awe, that I guess just as a way to kind of express praise or gratitude towards him. You know, even if it's not like explicitly, how you guys were saying in the last podcast, it's not explicitly like God, Jesus, just like in some small way, bringing that glory back to him, I guess is what I try to do with my art. And yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. I kind of realized that, kind of thinking about it, you're definitely like really inspired by nature, you know, for the reasons like it is God's creation. I think it's also deeper than like what about nature like inspires you? Because for me, I could care less about nature. I actually prefer like photography of like buildings and cities because I'm a city kid, you know. I just like visually, I like that better. But what about nature like really pushes you to draw that?
I find it so detailed in a way. Like, it's the smallest of things. Like, it took so, I mean, not that it took so much effort, but like there's so much behind it. Like looking at a tiny leaf or like a little odd shaped pebble, which is something, it seems so unique and so natural to me. And you know, I like those things that are different, or that were just, I don't know, they're just kind of there. Like, it's kind of like taking a moment to appreciate like the little things. And I guess you could do that with, you know, buildings and art, because they're like photography. You know, people had to sit there and create that, and even like the smallest things go into it. And I don't know. Yeah, I kind of lost.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I really do. It's an interesting way to look at it. Gives me a new like perspective when I'm looking at nature scenes, you know, looking at pictures of sunflowers. Like, dang, that thing is like complex, and that thing literally lives on itself. That's crazy.
Yeah, I definitely think it makes you think about what you're looking at in more depth than you usually would. Like, if you're walking down the street and you're looking at flowers, you're not really thinking about like how many petals it has, or like how many bits of pollen are probably on it, you know, how many bees have touched it that day, that sort of thing. You're thinking about, okay, it's pretty color. Wow, that thing's tall, or it's big, or there are a lot of them. And that's really all you think about. When you look at it from an artist's perspective, you're sitting there going, I want to see every vein on each petal. I want to know how many petals it has. I want to know exactly what color it is. I want to know where it's located so I can picture the scene that it's in. You think about all these extra details that the average person would be like, wow, why would you think about all that?
Yeah. That brings another question up. So do you think that it's necessary? Do you think that art works better when it's not explained from the art, like how the artist sees it? Do you think it works better when the artist doesn't, and this is for everyone. Do you think art works better when the artist does not explain it, how he or she sees it? Or do you think it actually enhances it when the artist shares his or her point of view? For example, like I had a completely different perspective after I heard Andre 3000 talk about touring life with Outkast after his Rick Rubin interview. And I gained more sympathy for him because I'm a big Outkast fan, but I just gained even more sympathy, kind of more like after that podcast is like, oh, I get why you don't want to make another record. You're literally one of the greatest writers, performers of all time. And nothing you do will ever be held to other people's standards, you know? I find myself like more invested in artists when I hear their point of view on their own artwork, you know? Like Song Explorer is one of my favorite podcasts. And I fell in love with an Iggy Pop song that I did not like after I heard him explain his writing and the soundscape for it. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I like this song now, you know? So again, just to read your question, because that was a long tangent. Do you think art works better when the artist shares his or her opinion or his or her viewpoint on it? Or do you think it doesn't?
I think it's a case by case sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like the one sweater Adam bought for me from the second year of the night, where it just says college, but it's inverted. I think that kind of speaks for itself. I can say, I could talk about myself, my college experience, which is none. I don't have any experience. But is that worth saying when there's nothing to say?
Yeah.
Really? I think it's a case by case basis too, for films. Quentin Tarantino's film for what's the movie where Django? I think that one speaks for itself. Or even with the movie Bruno, with the gay journalist, that speaks for itself. We don't need to talk about what the director's purpose behind it was, both those films. Same way I don't need to talk about Sweater. But it's case by case. I know some things worth explaining, like Banksy's. We want to know, but we will never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too, and I think part of art in that sort of visual aspect and the sense of enjoyment is the idea of questioning sort of the experience behind it, both the artist's experience creating it, like what were they experiencing that this was the outcome, and in that same experience, what experience were they trying to create for the viewer of the art or the listener or whatever it is. You got to think that something interesting has to happen there for that experience to go kind of both ways.
That almost in itself is case by case, because I know
I'm not saying like this applies to all artists and that sort of thing. Like it is a case by case thing, but like what would you say is like, if you had to pick sort of what that would look like, how do you create from your own experiences an experience for someone else? Do you define the experience as I'm experiencing this, so I want the consumer of the art to experience the same thing? Or do you want to experience something and create an entirely opposite or different experience for the consumer of the art? Does that make sense?
I think every artist has their own brushstroke. For myself, I can only speak for myself here with the Interlude sweaters. I spent forever just trying to research which ones to purchase so we could rework. Just purchase before we rework them. Reworking them was its own fiasco. That took us, we rushed it, I'm going to be honest. We rushed it. But everything turned out well. But the time I spent just staring at one single sweater before you guys came over that one day. Staring at the sweaters and thinking for days on end, just trying to brainstorm what to do with it so someone else can enjoy it. It wasn't about myself in that instance. It was solely about who is going to find the most enjoyment out of it and how can I make it tailored to that person without even knowing anything about them. That's one big dilemma with artists, is going into an industry where people look at your piece, and if it's not what they like, the way Harvey mentioned, if it's not emotionally connected to him, he's going to disregard it. And that's so taxing on us emotionally as a creator. We invest ourselves into it, and it's so disregarded instantly.
Yeah. Do you think that's more of like do you think that's more or less like a new problem now with everyone having to basically like run their own business, like artists now aren't like, you can't just unfortunately
go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, unfortunately now I think artists are now almost needed to make money from their artwork. I think back in the day, you could kind of like write poetry, do it on the weekends at the coffee shop, and and then do your day job, and live a pretty comfortable life. Do you think that kind of taxation is now a product of times because like artists have to make money somehow?
I think money is of course a heavy contributor to that. I think that's probably the second concern though, on the chart that we're looking at. The first concern is the grab and go, I guess, practice everyone has with this mainstream culture in general.
Yeah.
Where you want to look at something on Google, it pops up on your Google results in less than half a second. Or if you're trying to find, food to eat, you just pull up Postmates. We want to have something right away without trying to have some sort of better understanding of what you're getting into.
Yeah.
But for people trying to sell something like their artwork, it's hard to garner that sort of attention from someone when they just want their grab and go.
Yeah.
Where if you're trying to make a living, you have to go that quick route and target that demographic that only wants that grab and go.
Interesting.
A lot of people are towards that.
That makes a lot of sense. And
yeah,
not to be a bummer, but we got a couple minutes left before we kind of got to wrap it up.
For sure.
So
I want. Oh.
So I have sort of a kind of finale question that I guess we can leave
real
on.
Quick. I want to ask.
Before we
do the finale question. Before we do that finale question, I want to do that one. I do want Lexi's opinion on that same thing Jojo was talking about, the grab and go, making money.
Yeah.
I want to hear your kind of thoughts on that, Lexi, because literally your art style is something that you have to sit with, and like basically you're drawing pictures of nature, which the saying with nature is like stop, smell the roses. You're literally drawing that at times, and so how do you feel about this kind of like grab and go culture? And you're also an art major, correct? So you have to study this.
I don't know. I would say for me, that's part of the reason why I definitely don't like selling my art. Like, I'd rather just make it, and if, or give it as gifts. And if somebody wanted it and saw it, like, I'd rather give it to them, because a lot of the times when money gets involved, like Joseph said, it's more about, if this person likes it or not, and if they don't, then it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? But for me personally, like, I think when you make it for yourself, or like if you're looking at something like, oh, I like this, I want to do this, like, it's more, my art is more for me, and if somebody else sees it and can make a connection to it, like, that's great, and like I would want them to have that and have that experience. But I think part of me is so confused with going in as an art major, because when you do that, it's like that's going to be your lifestyle, and like that's going to be your career. And I've thought about it, like, do I really want to make that my career? Like, do I really want to bring in the money and have to rely on that? And like that can change you too, like, so much if it becomes more about the money, which is something that I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has become more about the money. Looking at the music industry, a few rappers, Lil Pump put out an album, like 12 songs, I think 2 years ago. None of them hit the charts, but the album sold.
Mm-hmm.
And I think based off their contracts, they're only signed those contracts and paid if they put out X amount of albums. Doesn't matter whether they hit charts. Doesn't matter how good they're written. Just he has to put out albums to get paid. And that's how it is the way the music industry works a lot of times, is you're paid based off of what you output, not the quality of the output.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Kind of to like, before Chase gets that last question, I think I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about kind of like contracts with like stuff like this, like podcasting. How do you know the worth of this? And I heard the best advice on like just handling your business, because essentially like you guys are business owners, you sell your art, kind of stuff like that. You have to dabble in business, unfortunately, whether you like it or not. It's beneficial for you to do it, absolutely. But they said one thing that I absolutely love and they said, when we negotiate anything, contracts, press, whatever, whenever we negotiate anything, we never negotiate from a position of money. It's always because the money will come. It's always from a position of, what in this contract am I going to hate in 2 years? Or what opportunities can I get afterwards? So always being future thinking and never monetary gain. So I think that's an important kind of thing to, kind of look at, because like, again, looking at money stresses you. Like, it gets stressful, it's unnecessary for your art. And I think it is important to, like, especially in your guys' cases, to like grow, a community of people who like follow, like, hey, I work at this place. Okay, now I work at this place. I think art is great at that, at creating a community to, like, not worship you, but to support you. So sorry, that was another tangent.
No, I actually think that's okay, because I think it does wrap up, and this will be sort of the last question, and we'll take 5 minutes on it. But other than just being creators and creating things, do you guys think, and just answer honest opinion, does God have a certain calling to artists besides maybe just creating things, if that makes sense? Like, because that's kind of a given, is, artists are designed, built, meant to create. But what else might you fit into being an artist?
I think every person has a calling. But being a creative being creative is one of the most burdening traits and characteristics you can ever have. You have this deep burning urge to express a part of yourself that can never be manifested completely. And that is so eternal through your whole life. No matter how much effort and time and money you sink into that craft, you will never be able to fulfill that creativity in its fullest capacity. So you're chasing that, but you're chasing that goal of pleasing someone instead of pleasing yourself. And I think finding that purpose that God gives you it's like chasing Neverland in a way. Everyone wants to go there, and as a kid, you envision it. For myself, I played with Legos a lot as a kid. I drew a lot as a kid. I was outside a lot. But as I got older, it wasn't that I let go of that dream, it's that it changed for me. Now I kind of want to get into business. I want to get into creating a culture, not just a craft. I think that in of itself is a form of art. Culture is art. If you really look into the grand scheme of it, coffee shops, that's a huge culture. Looking at vinyl record shops, there's history in those shops. Look at someone's artwork, that's history. You could see little pieces of a person painted onto a canvas. Van Gogh's artwork. He would write memos to his brother in every piece he would send him. But again, Van Gogh's pursuit to find his own craft. He found it, but that was the death of him. There was no means to an end. And that's what creativity means to me, at least.
For sure. Lexi?
Oh, her mic's bugged out.
No.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
I think as artists, and especially as Christians, we have a duty. Okay, so being an artist, that's a God-given talent. Having that talent is something that God gave you. And every talent that God gave you is something to use to glorify Him. And I think that as artists, we definitely have a duty to kind of further bring that glory to Him with our talents with art. It's a way to kind of further show His beauty and I guess just point culture back to Him, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, like I said before, in an explicit way. Like using your talents for God can be just doing everything you can to the best of your ability. Kind of just putting your all into it. Like how we're supposed to put our all into him. And I think that, yeah, art is just one way to do that. Like you can do it in so many ways, but definitely to just kind of bring everything back to him.
Yeah. Like it. It's a great perspective, guys.
All right, Harley, you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for watching this conversation. I think this is something that it's a conversation we will revisit again, because I think art is, said before, art is valuable, art is important, it matters. And I think the next episode will probably be with music. We'll have Michael and Adam on the show, get them to talk. On that one will probably go a long time because it's Michael and Adam and me and Chase. So that one can go for a long time. But yeah, I just, again, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit like, you subscribe, you follow the page. We're working on some stuff after COVID, something big, but also kind of low key. And yeah, just keep an eye on that, guys. And thank you all for being here.
With that said,
Appreciate you guys.
we will see you next time.